Hi, I'm Diane Brady, and I am here with Chase Peterson-Withorn, who is the Deputy Wealth Editor at Forbes, of course, Chase, and you have a fantastic story outlining basically how much money these various funds and people stand to lose because of Sam Bankman-Fried. So tell us a little bit about, first of all, how you got this story in the first place.
Yeah, sure. So Sam Bankman-Fried was on the Forbes 400 list of the richest Americans and our world's billionaires list over the last couple of years as he's raised a lot of money from venture funds and pension plans and all sorts of other billionaire, hedge funders and things like that. And as part of the process going through and valuing Sam Bankman-Fried and figuring out how much money he's worth at any given point in time, we've gone back and forth with him, and one of the big components of that is how much of FTX he owned. And as he raises more money and more funding rounds, that number changes. And so over time, we were always in communication with him about how much of FTX he owned. And so this past August, when I guess below the surface there was a lot of stuff going
Yeah,
on, but
little did you know
but
how useful that would be.
yeah, exactly. Whatever was going on at the time, but I can't even imagine. But for us, he was still, putting on the front that everything was normal as he was to everyone else, and so he sent us a capitalization table that showed some of the major shareholders of FTX, including him and his co-founder Gary Wang, who is also on the billionaires list. But it also had the shareholding of a number of other entities that are big investors in FTX. I presume as of August. So we were able to take a look at that. And as FTX is now going bankrupt, and it's unclear whether these shareholders are going to walk away with anything, and the numbers are looking pretty big, how much money they owe. So it's unlikely. We could kind of see who's really on the hook for a really substantial amount of
Well,
money.
walk us through it because, even the funds, there's some real, stalwarts, Temasek, the Ontario teacher, pension plan, and of course, the Sequoias, SoftBanks, et cetera. I mean, so give us a bit of a TikTok. Let's start with the people because being Diane Brady, the name Tom Brady just sort of like sang out to me. How much exactly did he have invested and how much does he stand to lose?
Yeah, and what's interesting about Tom Brady is that it actually comes from an earlier cap table that we had gotten from Sam Bankman-Fried. And so, it's not entirely clear exactly how much he owned as of now, or as of right before everything went sort of downhill very rapidly.
Right.
But based on that cap table, from before, we had something like, according to Sam, what he told us was that Tom Brady owned something like 0.15% of FTX, and then Giselle owned 0.09% of FTX, which is those are in a sense, they seem like very small numbers. They're small percentages,
Right.
but they were small percentages of a really big enterprise. And so if you look at, FTX raised money after that. And so you would think that Tom and Giselle's stakes were diluted a little bit,
Yeah.
but not by too much. So I think, our estimate was that Tom and Giselle own about 0.14% for Tom Brady and 0.08% for Giselle, which again, they seem like small numbers because they're small percentages, but really, at the peak of FTX earlier this year, when they raised money at a $32 billion valuation, we would think that Tom Brady's stake would have been worth something like 45 million, and Giselle's stake would have been worth something like $25 million. So about 70 million maybe combined.
Let's hope they
would
have
be
other
our
sources of income, right? At this point. But were you struck when you looked at these cap tables by the investors? I mean, is this a pretty common roster of players? And obviously, I know they all have small percentages, but I found myself surprised at the number of players that were investing in, what's still viewed to be a very risky asset, even if you're investing in the exchange. I mean, just give us a sense of some of the names there that came out to you.
Yeah, well, you're totally right that it's a new industry that's maybe relatively lightly regulated. There's a ton of uncertainty, and that was true before all of this happened. And so it is interesting that the names of people who invested in FTX are really some, sort of blue chip names in the industry. It is like Sequoia Capital, Paradigm, the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan was a big investor. SoftBank was a big investor. Tiger Global was a big investor. And I think, one of the main reasons that, that Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX were able to raise so much money from all of these, sort of major players is that they were seen as sort of the stable, company in the space. And there was a lot of trust and faith in Sam Bankman-Fried as a sort of serious business person and a visionary and all of that. And he was a big presence on Capitol Hill and, a big donor. And so where other, competitors maybe would have sort of ignored the regulatory concerns or had sort of a brash attitude toward it.
Yeah.
Sam Bankman-Fried, I think, was seen as more of the safer choice, somebody who was looking for a way to work with the government and move this entire industry forward and make it more mature and things like that. And so he was able to attract, that's not the only reason, but it's, a big part of the reason he was able to attract some real heavy hitters, in the investment industry.
We should probably point out, I mean, it seems to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that they perhaps lost a couple of $100 million, which sounds like a devastating amount, but for many of these particular players would be a little bit like sprinkling fairy dust, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's a very important point to make, which is that the amount of money that some of these funds and investors are losing is a large amount of money to the average person. It is not a large amount of money to any of them. These are big investment funds that have billions and billions and billions of dollars to invest. And oftentimes, they're going to invest in a portfolio of a ton of companies, knowing that some of them are going to go bust. And if one or two or three or however many of them are successes, then they'll be wildly successful on the whole. So, it's not devastating to any of those funds. Although I think this is maybe one of those ones that for a while there was really looking like a great investment, the sort of thing that could really help your returns. And it turned out that it's very much not.
Perhaps maybe more embarrassing than devastating to their bottom line. I want to ask you, Chase, about, Sam Bankman-Fried, because you've met him many times over the years, of course, in assessing his wealth. Just tell us a little bit about when you first met him, because he was 26 point, I can't remember, he was definitely worth more than $26 billion at his peak, right? Now, what is he worth at this point?
FTX raised, they raised $400 million at a $32 billion valuation in January. Sort of just as the crypto market had kind of, it had turned by then, but they had, they had still raised at a really high valuation. And the U.S. operations of FTX had raised money at an $8 billion valuation. And so combined, FTX and its U.S. operations were valued at $40 billion in January. And so that was the last time they raised money, probably maybe the last time they ever raised money. And it was the highest valuation that they had ever raised money at. And so at that point, Sam Bankman-Fried was worth about $26.5 billion by our count. And now we think he's worth less than $1 billion. And it's super unclear whether there's any real material wealth there at all, because so much of his fortune was tied up in his equity in FTX, FTX US, and the holdings of Alameda Research, all of which are bankrupt now. And so it sort of comes down to, did he really,
what did he manage to get out and put somewhere else?
He gave a lot of money to, he's put some money into philanthropy, but, did he pull any money out for himself quietly without anybody knowing about it? The details, there's not a big indication of that yet, but the details are sort of waiting to be seen. But it seems like he's worth less than $1 billion. And when I asked Sam Bankman-Fried about that last week, as everything was going up in flames, he was still searching for a bailout for FTX, looking for investors. Certainly was extremely busy. Had to have been inundated with requests for all sorts of things, and he hadn't spoken to anybody in a long time. And I asked him about his net worth, and I said that we thought it was probably less than $1 billion. And he actually replied to me, and he said that he isn't sure what his net worth is at this point, but he can't confidently dispute that it's less than $1 billion. And that was before FTX filed for bankruptcy. So
Did
so
he
even
seem
Sam Bankman-Fried doesn't
devastated?
seem to think he's a billionaire.
I mean, you've again give us some sense of what he's like as a person. I mean, that's a very calm response to somebody who's just seen their net worth plummet more than 90%.
Yeah, I mean, my experience with Sam Bankman-Fried is that he's very calm person, a very calculating person, and always gave the impression that he was extremely forthright and that there wasn't any question you couldn't ask him. There wasn't a topic that he wouldn't really go there, at least when it came to his wealth. And he was very generous with his time in sort of explaining, here's what I own, here's what we think it's worth, here's why it might be worth less than what I've marked it at. I mean, you would tell him, well, we're going to go lower than what you think this is worth, for example, and he would say, okay, no problem. He didn't fight hard for his, he wasn't fighting you every tooth and nail for every dollar or anything like that. And he would tell us information that would lower the numbers, in some cases. And so he definitely gave the impression of somebody who was, pretty forthright about all of this stuff. And really where we had a lot of questions were sort of just in the business model itself. And, all of that, crypto itself being, a little opaque and hard to figure out. But, he was very, he was very willing to sort of talk through all of this stuff, and not somebody who lobbied hard one way or another, sort of for anything. He was pretty easy to talk to.
Have you looked at the knock-on effect on other crypto billionaires? I mean, any sense as to, obviously they're not in his position, but certainly we've seen the market tumble. Has that knocked a number of other people off the billionaire list as well?
Yeah, well, so we had a number of crypto billionaires fall off the billionaires list this year, just as the prices fell. That was before FTX went belly up, and so none of those crypto billionaires are back on the list. And you can look and you can see that the remaining crypto billionaires are certainly not doing better than they were before this. As we've seen the price of Bitcoin drop, and you can look and see what Coinbase is doing and all of that in the market. So it's been a bad year for crypto before all of this happened, and this has certainly not helped really any of the crypto billionaires. With maybe the exception, and I don't know net worth wise, but maybe power wise or something like that. There is an argument that can be made that one crypto billionaire in particular, CZ, has come out maybe a bit of a winner in this.
This is finance.
In the sense that he maybe helped orchestrate the the takeout of a major competitor. So is that however many months or years down the road, is that a win? It might be, but right now I don't think even CZ is substantially wealthier than he was a year ago.
Can I stand back 1 second and just take a look at the broader picture of the volatility of wealth that you're seeing? Since you've been covering this for several years, markets go up, markets go down, but how does it compare now when we've got, these wild swings of wealth? Is that unusual? I mean, not just crypto. We've obviously seen, I'm not going to say implosion, but certainly a downturn in big tech as well.
Yes, there's definitely always ups and downs. And at any given point, there's always ups and downs. And there have been points that have definitely swung harder up and especially downwards than there is now. I mean, we could look at the dot-com bubble, for example. You could look at the housing, crisis, and then the recession. And even just the very quick but very sharp dip with COVID in early 2020. All of those downturns have definitely been sharper than now. But it is true that right now it's sort of the S&P is sort of pinballing a little bit here and there, and billionaires can definitely gain or lose a ton of money in a given day. And you're right, especially in the tech arena where particular billionaires have lost a lot of money. Mark Zuckerberg's net worth is way down. Elon Musk has been down lately, and so it's definitely more volatile than at a lot of points, but there have been some swings that have been really, really, kind of wild swings, and things aren't down as bad as they were in that 2 week stretch in March 2020, for example, or
Right.
when the dot-com bubble burst or anything like
So,
that.
so Chase, I have to end by saying basically, since you are a money man, a numbers man, what is on your radar? I know with regard to what will you be looking for, not just with Sam Bankman-Fried, but can you give us a bit of a sense of what's around the corner? I know we're not soothsayers, we're journalists here, but the investigation. I'm just curious the likelihood that he will increase his net wealth from here. And again, maybe I don't know if that's the right question to ask, but it's certainly one that's in my mind.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Obviously, can't predict the future, but I find it hard to believe in the short or medium term, at the very least, that Sam Bankman-Fried will increase his net worth. If anything, all the details that come out have seemed to just be worse and worse for him, net worth wise. But also I know that he's, facing some criminal investigations. There's probably, I'm sure, going to be, a lot of legal action that he's going to have to fight through. So I just find it hard to believe that Sam Bankman-Fried is going to be on the billionaires list anytime soon. Maybe if it comes out that he didn't do anything fraudulent, and it was maybe just some bad business practices. Maybe way down the line, he's a very young person. He's a bright person, and if
Second
the facts
act,
come out and they're beneficial to him, maybe
right?
one day he has a successful business again. But I think right now it's pretty hard to see that happening. And as more and more of the details come out, it seems less and less likely.
Great. Thank you, Chase.
Yeah, thank you.